Well, welcome, cowpokes. My name is Larson Walter Finneyfrock, and I'm here to tell you my story. Oh, but first, I'd like to start with the story of my mother. Her name was Marielle, but she was known as Marielita de la Luna because she loved nighttime. She loved to go out at night and she loved to draw these amazing pictures. Well, one of her pictures became quite famous. We're going to try a little experiment where you're going to do a little art in the dark, if you don't mind. Now here's what I'd like you to do before we get started on this activity in honor of my mother, Marielita de la Luna. I'd like you to find a dark room, not too much light. The second thing I'd like you to do is grab yourself a paper or a card and some crayons, a box of crayons. Maybe like my box of crayons right here. Keep it with me all the time. My mother carved this box. Okay. Now, once you get those things, gather around. Here's what we're going to do. I want you to take that paper, in the dark room, of course, and I want you to open your box of crayons. Now, you don't need to look at what color you're getting, because this is art in the dark and the color don't matter. Just grab yourself a crayon out of there. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to take that crayon, and on one side of your paper, I'd like you to write your name. Just sign it. In case you become famous someday, it's important to have a signature. Now, the second thing I'd like you to try is to draw a picture in the dark. Don't try to see what you're drawing. Try to feel it. Try to listen to it. Maybe even smell it a little bit. That's what my mother did. So what Marielita loved to do is when it was dark, she would go outside and she would look around and she would just draw everything she saw. Well, I don't know if she actually saw it because it was dark, but you know, she imagined it. So, I want you to imagine right now that you're up on a hillside and you're going to draw your home up on that hill. So, let's start, whatever your crayon is, on that piece of paper near the bottom. Just draw yourself a nice landscape and put a big old hill in the middle of that landscape. Leave room on the top of that hill for a house. And once you get that hill drawn, what I'd like you to do is start right there on the top of that hill. And I'd like you to draw a house. Now I'm going to give you a moment. You can keep drawing while I'm talking. That house can look like whatever you want. When I picture my house, I picture like a big old box. Maybe even 2 stories. Never been in a 2-story house before, but I can imagine it. Big door in the front of that house, maybe even a double door with one of those curves at the top. Now, you draw whatever you want. You just keep drawing your house. I'd be sure to have a few big windows, though, in the front of that house. And definitely a nice chimney in the middle. Now, once you get that house drawn, it doesn't need to be fancy, because art in the dark's all about getting the curves and the images and the shapes. After you draw that house, right outside that house, I'd like you to put a nice big old oak tree, or maybe a maple tree or a pine tree, whatever you want. Make it right next to the porch if you got a porch on your house. If not, maybe put it outside a window on the side of the hill. It's got to be a big tree, though. If you want to add some little trees, that's fine. Draw that nice big tree with a fat round trunk. And after you get that trunk drawn, here's a picture I'd like you to make. Imagine this were your house and you were out there and it was nighttime. And up in that nighttime sky you saw some stars. You might even put a few stars out there. And if you want to get creative, maybe even have a few clouds drifting by. Maybe a full moon up high in that sky. Yep, I can see the picture now. Nighttime in the country on that hillside. Now, along with all this, here's what I'd like you to try. On that tree, make at least one big branch sticking out. Now, I have to admit, this is something from my childhood that I remember so fondly. We had one of these big old oak trees with a strong branch sticking out. And my mom, she built me a swing under that tree. So I'd like you to put that big branch sticking out, and under that branch, I'd like you to put a nice swing. Yep, just a fine swing. So you have your house with your big windows and maybe a porch. You have that nice tree in a swing. Oh, and I want you to imagine there might be a few birds or maybe some bats flying by because it might be a full moon or something. So add a few birds or bats in the sky if you can, underneath the stars, below the clouds, above the tree. And once you get that tree done, that magnificent tree with the swing under it, here's what I'd like you to add. Oh, and wait, here's an idea. My mother, Marielita, she loved to draw self-portraits. Let's make this a self-portrait. Why don't you put yourself on that swing? You can have whatever clothes you want on. You can be smiling. However you want to make your face, go ahead. Add yourself to that swing. You see, one of the things Marielita drew was the great famous painting of Custer's Last Stand, where the Sioux Indians and Custer's military were fighting, and the Sioux Indians won that battle. Now eventually they lost the war, but that battle, that portrait, that's famous, and it was drawn under a full moon. Okay, we're getting near the end now. You got your self-portrait, you got your new house on the hillside, it's all looking good. I'd like you to do one last thing for this activity. Could you turn that paper back over and write down the color of the crayon you're using? Now don't worry, if you can't see, I want you to just imagine what the color is. Write what it is. Now once you finish, I'm just going to tell you one more thing, but that's going to come with the next story. So good luck with your art in the dark. I'll be back to talk with you in a few minutes.